has some time, fires towards the end zone, leaping grab, touchdown.
1:15 left to play to decide the state champion in Division 4. They will hand it to Blue. Running left, he got undercut. He got hit near the marker. I think he might be short.
Live from Max and Irma's in Westerville, it's OHSAA Football This Week. Now here's your hosts, Marty Bannister and Greg Frey.
And welcome to week number 3 of the high school football season, Ohio High School Football This Week here on EBSN. I am the aforementioned Marty Bannister. That's the quarterback, Greg Frey, and we're so glad you're with us as we once again preview and look back at the best in Ohio football and the best in high school football in the country, Ohio high school football. And we've had some great games in the first couple of weeks. We're going to talk about week 3. We got a jam-packed show for you tonight. We're going to hear from our friends at DeSales. They're here tonight. Dublin Jerome will visit with us as well, too. New Albany's going to be here. Steve Helwagen from bucknuts.com, 24/7 Sports will be in as well, too. And Tim Street from the Ohio High School Athletic Association will stop by later on in the program and talk to us as well, too. Greg, you hear coaches always tell you that teams make the biggest improvement week 1 to week 2, and there were a lot of teams that made that kind of jump last week. I was at Hartley last week to watch the Hawks dismantle Wheelersburg. I was pretty impressed by that. But there are a lot of teams that made that jump after winning their first games, got better going into week 2.
Well, that's typical. You know, teams started getting into a little rhythm. Obviously, when you have game film to watch, that's where coaches can really improve, and that's where the players can improve because they get to see, you know, their mistakes. They get to see the areas where they're playing well, and they can continue to play well. But I think that's the film study is so important at that point in the season, and you're playing against somebody else, obviously, and you know it's another week of practice, and that's where you start to really get into rhythm as a team, and you start to see that major improvement. You eliminate a lot of the mistakes, and then you step up and start playing better. And certainly that win by Coach Birchfield and his squad, that was a big one because Wheelersburg had not lost in the regular season in
2014.
a long
2014.
time.
Yeah, it was.
And it wasn't even close. I mean, that's the part that I would have never guessed. I thought they could have won, obviously,
right.
But
yeah, it was
blow
impressive.
them out?
It was an impressive performance.
They improved
all the way
a little
around.
bit, didn't they?
Yeah, we don't want to get the folks at DeSales all upset. We're going to talk about you, don't worry.
Yes.
But we have to talk. That was kind of the big game last week, so we had to make sure we get that covered and get started. Speaking of DeSales, they'll be with us here in a moment. They're off to a 2-0 start. New Albany head coach Bubba Kidwell will be here. They're off to a 2-0 start. Dublin Jerome, which lost a tough one last week to Pickerington North, they're at 1 up and 1 down. So we're seeing these teams, Greg, that I think a lot of folks thought would be factors in their division races as we're still a week or so away from that, really starting to make that move right now after 2 weeks.
Well, they better. I mean, you know, you got
right.
a 10-game season. It's not like you can take a couple weeks off. It's you start getting it week 3, week 4.
You coached, didn't you, at one time, didn't you? You sound just like one.
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I mean, it's true though. I mean, you start, you know, people start peeking at those ratings, you know, about now and in the next week or so because it's legit. You know, you need to position yourself to be in that top 8. In your region, so they count.
Absolutely. We want to tell you, if you want to check in tonight, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us where you're watching the program, who your favorite team is. We're already hearing from some of our friends at Jerome. They're checking in already. Good to have you folks with us here tonight. And we'll talk about the Celtics coming up. Head coach Bob Gecewich is here, and we'll talk to him as well, too, as this program rolls along here this evening. And, again, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter is where you can find us. On Twitter, I'm at Marty Bannister. He's at Greg Frey 15. And our EBSN online Twitter page, at EBSN Online. You can send us questions, comments there as well, too. You hit on a good point a moment ago. Just a couple of weeks away from the computer rankings. Those come out in just a couple of weeks, and that's, again, I like a lot of coaches will say, well, we don't pay any attention to those, but they have a guy in the office who watches that and does all those different things.
Yes, they do.
But they know all about that stuff. But you have to kind of focus all that out and think about your football team, knowing, as you said, there's still it's a 10-week season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at that, you know, and it depends on your philosophy, but they all look at it. Obviously they do, and they need to know where they're at, but there's also a portion of, you know, like we have a lot of coaches that sit here and you ask them, okay, what's your focus this week? Is it more on the opponent or on you? You know, and the reality is about 98% of that is on them.
Right.
Because they know if they're improving and they're getting better and they're playing at their peak, they know that, you know, most coaches believe they can play with anybody and they're going to win. Don't turn the ball over. You hear all the cliches, but it's really true about improving your team because that's really it's about controlling the controllables, as we heard last week. As my good friend Tim Kite would say, and it's important because you can't control the other teams. You can control what you do and your players and your environment and your attitude, and that's what they're focused on.
So it's week number 3 of the high school football season. There are a number of big games coming up Friday. We'll talk about those. And when we come back after this timeout, we'll have head coach Ryan Wiggins join us from DeSales and tell us about his club. They have a tough one coming up for him on Friday night. They go on the road to Youngstown State to play Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. And then after that, a couple of his players are going to join us as well, too. We're going to let them eat first. Always take care of the players first. When we come back, we'll talk DeSales football. They go on the road Friday night to Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. We'll do that when we come back. This is the EBSN Ohio High School This Week Football Show. Stay with us. We're back at Max and Urban's here in Westerville after this.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Jerome Honda of Dublin and Jerome Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jerome Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
And we welcome you back to Max and Irma's in Westerville at the corner of Maxtown and Old State Road, Old 3C Highway. I'm Marty Bannister, the quarterback Greg Frey, alongside as always as we talk high school football with you. It's week number 3 coming up on Friday, and one of the bigger games in the area. Well, in the area sort of. It's an area team going on the road. The 2-0 Stallions from DeSales. They travel up to the northeastern part of the state to play at Youngstown State University against Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. Always one of the perennial powers in the state, and the head coach of DeSales, Ryan Wiggins, is here with us tonight. First of all, Coach, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Tell me about your 2-0 start. What do you like about your football team right now?
Well, I like the way we've come out and played. I think we've played very, very hard. That's been evident on film. We've made our share of mistakes here and there, but played very, very hard on both sides of the ball. We've gotten off to some good starts, and that, to me, that's a good thing. We've come out and put points on the board. Which, puts pressure on the other team, puts pressure on the other offense. And then defensively, we've got to clean up, but we have been opportunistic. We've forced a lot of turnovers in 2 games, and, it's like we tell our guys the name of the game is to keep them out of the end zone and take the ball away. So if you're doing those 2 things, you're doing something right. So far, so good. I feel like it's very early, and the road keeps getting tougher.
Yeah, especially with the type of schedule you play. We'll talk more about that coming up in a few moments. But your kids know, as do a lot of players in the Central Catholic League, when you walk on the field, you're kind of carrying a target with you when you walk on the field.
No question. I mean, we always say people don't schedule teams like us unless they think they can beat them. You don't get people to schedule you that easily. So our guys understand that. They know that. They know what they represent and what we're trying to follow, and that's just part of it.
Ryan, you guys are coming off a 6-4 season. What's your What's your focus with the team this year? How do you, going into the season, 2-0 so far, what are you telling your team about what you want to accomplish for the season?
Well, our goals really never change. I mean, we have high expectations. That's part of the reality of our program. Those were there long before any of us got there. But, we can look at last year and try to look at what went well and look at what didn't go so well. It's still fresh in our mind, and try to improve upon that. We ultimately we had a good football team. We just didn't have enough points. So our lesson to our guys has been that there's only so many opportunities in football, and you get 10 of them, and you don't get second chances, and so you have to make good on the ones you have. and we didn't make good on enough of them. So we got to do a better job of that this season.
Yeah, leave it to guys like us to remind you of last year.
Yeah.
You're like, I just want to worry about tomorrow, right?
Right. Yeah, well, we've said that. Look, we got to learn from 2017, but it's 2018, and that's really all we care about.
Right. How about your week of practice? I mean, today's Wednesday, so I know Wednesday it better be pretty much done at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things I'm encouraged about is we have a fairly mature group of seniors that have helped us have good practices. The weather interrupted us here and there, but they've handled it well. They've handled the heat, they've handled the adversity, and that's all part of a football season, as you know. And so I think the team goes as the seniors go. I've always said that, and I'm happy with how our seniors are trying very hard to lead us at this point.
Ryan Wiggins, the head coach at DeSales, is here with us tonight at Max and Irma's in Westerville. His Stallions on the road Friday night with a tough stop going up to the northeastern part of the state of Ohio to face Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. What I wanted to ask you about when you hit on the weather a moment ago, and I know every coach will say the same thing. Everybody's got to play in it. Everybody's got to practice in it. With players, is it more of a mental thing right now when you deal with these type of conditions, all the heat and humidity you've had to fight through this week?
I think that's part of it. I really do. And, the thing about it is we try really hard to put everything behind us. When we go to that practice field, it's not that what's going on isn't important outside of practice. Obviously, they have schoolwork and they have things going on in their lives. That's all important. But we try very, very hard to focus on the couple hours we have, focus on the moment and focus on the play and the rep and all those things. And I know that sounds a little bit cliche or like coach speak, but ultimately the little things add up and they matter, and we're trying to focus on those as much as we can.
I'd imagine so, especially with the situation as it is right now with the heat and everybody's dealing with it. You just got to go out and get ready to play on Friday night. Coach, you've talked kind of in loose terms about your football team. You got a couple of your players here tonight. Mm-hmm. Why don't you take a moment and talk about them and then give us some of the other leaders in your squad right now?
Well, the two I brought with me tonight are two of our very best players also on and off the field. Number one, Carter Hillary. Carter's a wide receiver and defensive back. He also plays some slot. He's a very good athlete, and he's a 3-year letter winner. Very explosive with the ball in his hands. He had a couple explosive plays in both games so far this year, and also plays well in the defensive secondary. One of the best players on the state championship lacrosse team from last spring. So he's a winner. He comes from good stock, and really proud of what he's been able to accomplish. Joey Velasquez has also had a great couple of games for us. He had 136 yards a week ago, or last week, I should say. He played very, very well, and sometimes when we needed plays, whether it was him as a linebacker, whether it was him as a running back, he found a way to make those plays. Joey's a two-sport athlete committed to Michigan for football and baseball, and he's another kid. He's tough. You can tell by looking at him that he's been in the weight room quite a bit, and he's another kid that loves the grind. He loves to practice, he loves to lift, he loves to condition, and loves to compete. So both of those guys are two of the guys we're proud of. And it's hard. I mean, I don't want to diminish anybody, but we have a good group of seniors collectively. Anthony Sharoni is another guy, wide receiver, defensive back, who does everything the way you ask him to do it. Very coachable. We have a lot of talent in our big D lineman, Rodas Johnson, who's got some decisions to make in terms of where he's going to play at the next level. But Rodas gives us some things on offensive and defensive line. And then, again, just a lot of guys that have the same goals in mind. They're like-minded. They're good students. They're good kids. They're hard workers, and they're competitors. So that's what, to me, is exciting to coach.
I got a question for guys like for Joe and Carter and other guys. They're two-way guys. Yep. As a coach, how do you monitor that with these guys taking snaps on both sides? Because clearly they're good enough to play both ways, but that's always a challenge to go the full game.
Well, I've always been a defensive guy, and so selfishly I want guys on defense first. So I think our kids just don't want to come off defense because they know that's what I want. Right. But with some of the things we're doing in our offense and the up-tempo and the spreading it around, I'm not certain that that's not where they rest now. So we've had to change our thinking a little bit. But again, these guys have played two ways now for a couple of years, and they're very well prepared. But it's not just them. That's one of the reasons I think that what we're doing is a good thing for our team, because we have plenty of guys that we have faith in. And Carter needs a couple plays off. It's no problem. Joey moves around or takes a play off. It's no problem. And we'll count on the next guy in.
When you came off the season you had last year, were these two of the guys that you kind of looked at for everybody else in your football team, hey, these are our leaders. These are the guys that we want you to rally around and understand 6 and 4. We can be better than that.
Yes, definitely those two and others, but definitely these two guys. They played a major role last year, and so they felt that disappointment and falling short of your goals. And so, the good thing about being a junior in that situation is you got one more season. It's sad for the seniors, and they're turning their stuff in and they're finished. But for these guys, they got one more crack at it. So. I would say from the start of things in the winter, they want to do better, and that's what we're trying to do.
Off to a 2-0 start in DeSales Stallions. Head coach Ryan Wiggins with us here at Max and Irma's in Westerville. It's this week. It's our Ohio High School Football Association this week in football as we come to you live here tonight at Max and Irma's. Full program with you. We're here till 9 o'clock tonight. We'll let the players finish their sandwiches here real fast, and we're going to bring them up. One more question for you. Talk to us about your opponent on Friday night. Again, it just doesn't get any easier. You go with a win over Dayton Dunbar, then you knocked off Lancaster by 10 points, and now you go to Youngstown Cardinal Mooney.
Well, I think everybody that follows high school football knows how good Cardinal Mooney is. They're a tradition-rich program. They're physical, they're tough, they're well-coached, they're used to winning. Playing at their place is always a difficult thing. And, I don't know if there's many teams out there that have won any more big titles or anything than they have. So, you know what you're getting. It's hard fought, and every play matters. That's the way it's been when we've played them in years past. It was that way last year, and certain it'll be that way this time. So we got to get ourselves ready and play.
Are there any challenges logistically? Because that's a bit of a travel.
Right.
I mean, is that something that concerns you, or it's just, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to travel and figure it out?
Yeah, I think sometimes the bus rides can wear you out, no question. We've been on 2 of them already, and we're heading for another one. But I will say that it's a little bit unique at DeSales. We've traveled so much over the years that we're kind of good at it, kind of used to it, and I think it prepares you for postseason down the road. So we're gonna get out of school early, stop and eat, stretch out. We're gonna make it fun, and ultimately winning the game will make it the most fun. But I don't think we're worried about it. I think we're looking forward to it.
I'm going to ask one more question going back to your opponent this week. Give me a little more detail on X and O's. What do you see when you see them on film?
I see a big physical offensive front that can run the football downhill. I think they have good athletes, much like us. It's a similar matchup. Good athletes across the board and throw it a little better, which makes them more dangerous. And then just very sound and very aggressive on defense. I mean, they're a very physical football team. That's the way they play. And very well coached, no question about that. So solid all-around team in every area.
All right, should be a fun one for your team on Friday night. We appreciate you stopping by. We're going to get your players up here now and talk to them for a few minutes. We appreciate your time, Coach.
Yeah,
good to meet you.
Thanks for having
much.
me.
Ryan Wiggins joining us here tonight at Max and Irma. Stay with us when we return on OHSAA High School Football this week. We will talk to a couple of DeSales players and get their thoughts on the road trip to Cardinal Mooney on Friday night. We'll do this after this timeout. We're at Max and Irma's in Westerville and on EBSN Online. Stay with us.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Jerome Honda of Dublin and Jerome Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jerome Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
In Westerville on Wednesday night. When we are here on Wednesdays, that of course means we're talking high school football. It's week number 3 of the season, and we've been focusing in the first portion of our program on the DeSales Stallions. They go on the road Friday night to Youngstown State to take on Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. And joining us here at our broadcast location, we have Carter Hillary and Joey Velasquez. You heard head coach Ryan Wiggins talk about these two gentlemen a moment ago, so we thought we'd bring them up and let them talk about their football team and their season so far. Carter, let me start with you first of all. You're off to a 2-0 start. You remember the 6-4 last year. What's been the difference, the start last year to the start this year?
Well, obviously now that Joey and I are leaders, it's our team, so we know what it takes. We had the disappointment of last year, obviously, but you don't want to hang on that. But it has a little bit of a fire burning in you to do better than whatever last year's left for us, and especially this being my last year of football, want to leave it all out there.
It's funny because at some schools, 6-4, they're having the bands go down the hallway and having parades. Yeah. And you guys are disappointed. I mean, that says something, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. We have a winning culture at DeSales, and 6-4, not as good for us. I mean, usually that's a playoff team. It just came down to points and certain wins that we needed to make, and other people needing to win certain games. So just at the end of the day, it wasn't enough, and this year we need to do better.
As mentioned, Joey Velasquez is with us as well, too. He's at the far end of the table. Joey, take me through the similar mindset going into the season. How different was the mindset this year when practice started back in August and you rolled the footballs out and took the field?
Yeah, it started off in the weight room. We really tried to get after it, and like you said, 6-4, people are happy about that. Not us. At DeSales, we expect to win a championship every year. That's our goal. And we knew what it took last year. Obviously, that disappointment. So we had to change some things and rally together and really just come together and have a successful year there.
Do people have really an understanding who don't play in the CCL? Do they have any understanding of how tough that? I mean, it's only 5 schools, 4 schools playing football, right? Not competing for the championship. But the rivalries are so intense. DeSales, Hartley, Watterson, Hartley, DeSales, Washington. It's so intense. Just in those games, they have a great amount of meaning, don't they?
These rivalries have been going on forever, and just carry out the tradition. And you don't want to be one of those teams that lose to Hartley or lose to Watterson. So those games mean a little bit something else, a little more to us.
Talk to me about your season so far. What do you like about what you're doing this year? Where can you get better as we go along?
Offensively, I think having the new offense, I like it a lot. I mean, we're really trying to pick up the tempo and try to get after it more instead of wear teams down. We have special athletes out there and try to get the balls in their hands and just make big plays and just score, I guess. Yeah.
Carter, Coach Wiggins called you explosive a moment ago, the type of season you're having so far. When you hear that, what's that tell you, but his thoughts about what you're doing right now?
Well, obviously they're positive, but just being able to go out there and be an athlete and just putting the ball in people's hands like Joey or Anthony or Owen Faulkner Jr., anyone, we have weapons, and just being able to put the ball in different places and having success is very, very good for us.
Coach talked about going on the road on Friday, but you guys are used to that. You've traveled. It's not a big deal. But this was a little bit different. You're going all the way up to Northeast Ohio. It's an earlier start on the bus than usual. What are those days like for people who maybe don't understand what it's like for a team that travels as much as you guys do?
Well, it's obviously a challenge getting on that bus and waiting. Having to wait before a football game is one of the worst feelings. Some people like to sleep. Some people don't talk to anyone. Some people can't sleep and they're just zeroed in. But
what do you do?
Me, I'm a big sleep guy. I'm a big sleep guy, especially after sitting in school where we don't have air conditioning in most rooms. So sitting in that hot box, getting out a little early, chilling in the AC, I got to take a nap before games.
Joey, what about you? What's your pregame ritual?
I like to listen to music. I like to watch some highlight films of guys, and I'm more of the zero-in guy.
Well, the headphones. You guys wear the headphones on the field. I mean,
Yes,
you've
sir.
seen that over the years. That's really been something. I know when Greg played, they didn't wear headphones. Like they didn't even have they didn't have face masks when he played. But in that mindset, what does that do for you? I've always wondered about that when I see guys on the field with the headphones on, going through their pregame warm-ups. What's that do for you?
I feel like it just kind of gets you in your zone, like where you have to be mentally for the game, and just gets you prepared and you're ready to play.
Carter, you mentioned the offense a moment ago and the type of weapons that you have. Is the feeling on offense for this team right now that whenever you get the football, you feel like you can put it in the end zone?
Yes, sir. Any given play, we expect that get that 3 yards, get that 4 yards, but with the type of weapons that we have, there's always that chance of someone breaking one tackle, making someone miss, and getting a big play. And with our offense this year, the up-tempo, it's like organized chaos, but in a good way. So,
Coach mentioned you played lacrosse as well, too.
Yes,
and that's a growing number of players who play lacrosse and play football at the same time. Similarities, how does that help you?
Speed of the game. Football, get a play off, whatever, but we try to speed it up. But speed of the game is really what helps in conditioning. Obviously, our coach loves multiple sport athletes. You want to be doing something all year round, staying in shape, doing anything you can while you're a high school student, because days are numbered. Yeah, days are numbered.
No question. Joey, about you, you're also a baseball player as well, too. How does that help you? What's the mentality of that?
Just defensively in the outfield and everything, open up your hips, being able to run on the base path, speed, I mean, it's everything. So.
Now, you've verbally committed to Michigan.
Yes, sir.
When you make that kind of move in this town, I'm sure you probably heard a lot from fans, but that's whatever it is. That's what it is. You know that's going to come with it.
Yes, sir.
What was it that stood out about Ann Arbor for you and Jim Harbaugh?
Just people up there. It's awesome. It's like I went up there and I felt like it was family. Up there, the place, everything up there, it's beautiful. And the academics there is great. Engineering is top 5 in the nation, so it's perfect. It's perfect fit for me.
I'm sure you hear, though, like in the halls and from opponents and things on there. You probably hear it a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit.
just a little?
Yeah.
Is it easy to block out?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to block out. I mean, I want to listen to people that care and love about me, so, I mean, I just block out the rest.
With where this team is at right now, you've won your first 2 games. Take me back to those first 2 games. What stood out about the 2 wins for you, the 2 openers?
Well, it was kind of a big start. Like, we started off fast. We kind of got on the teams quick, and that's what we like to see. Just get out there on them and just not stop. Don't let our foot off the gas. Just stay after it every single play and just get after it.
Carter, what about you? What's after high school for Carter Hillary?
For me, I'm verbally committed to Ohio State to play lacrosse, actually. So, OH. Yeah.
You knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yeah, you knew
that was, But that's, again, that mixture of what that is and lacrosse, the way that sport is growing is really remarkable, isn't it?
It is, especially just from like 5 to 10 years ago. The growth is huge, and we see a lot of people playing that game. It's physical. It's not as physical as football, but it's definitely a physical game, and it's a really fun sport.
DeSales on the road Friday night. They go to Youngstown State to face Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. Carter Hillary, Joey Velasquez, we appreciate you coming here after practice. Thanks very much. Best of luck to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, stay with us. More coming up on our program tonight. Again, we're live at Max and Irma's in Westerville at the corner of Maxtown and 3C. We'd love to have you join us. We're here till 9 o'clock. Much more to come on the program. Stay with us.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Jermaine Honda of Dublin and Jermaine Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jermaine Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
welcome back to Max and Irmis in Westerville. It's Wednesday. That means high school football discussion right up until 9 o'clock. I'm Marty Bannister. The quarterback, Greg Frey, rejoins us. And in the middle, from bucknuts.com, 247.com, is our good friend Steve Helwagen, who covers Ohio State football, high school football. Wanted to have Steve on because, as I'm sure you're aware, there's been some news surrounding what's been going on with Ohio State's fothball team. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And with high school football, of course, being, other than Saturdays, the biggest night of football in the state of Ohio, I thought it would be interesting to have Steve on. He covers Ohio State on a daily basis to maybe get his thoughts on where things, all that's going on surrounding Ohio State's football program, how the recruiting has been affected by all that. Steve, first of all, I know you just came from interviews tonight down at the Woody Hayes facility. What's the mindset down there right now before we talk a little high school football?
Yeah, I think everybody's really optimistic about the direction of everything. I mean, you have a game, the first game that comes off the way that it did. They blew out Oregon State 77-31. Oregon State is probably going to be one of the worst teams in Power 5 football again this year. They won one game last year, and coming back this year, I think they did a few things I thought that were pretty good offensively for Oregon State in that game, but their defense gave up 10 touchdowns to Ohio State. Now, Ohio State's offense, to me, is also going to be just outstanding when you think about Dwayne Haskins and the people around him that he can distribute the ball to. The potential is there to have a huge production every time out, regardless of who you're playing against. But I think, obviously, Urban Meyer has been on this limbo situation. He was suspended all the way up through the first game. Now he's able to attend practice. He will not be coaching the team this week against Rutgers or the following week in the big game down against TCU down in Arlington, Texas. And after that, he'll be full go. He'll be back the week for Tulane. He'll be coaching the team and in practice and everything. So I think it's just been kind of a multi-layered thing. I know that in terms of recruiting coverage, he had a chance to get in touch with a lot of top prospects upon being reinstated, at least in some regard, on this past Monday. And so he's trying to do everything he can to solidify things. And they've got a pretty good class in place right now for 2019, and they just need to fit in those last 3 or 4 pieces to this puzzle to kind of make it all click together. I mean, the machinery they've put together, I mean,
remarkable.
You guys know about it.
Yeah.
This is a stat I looked up. In the last 5 years, their classes have gone number 4 in the country, number 7, number 3, and in the last 2 years, number 2 and number 2. So when you put good material into the blender, good material is going to come out of the blender on the other side when you're done, and that's why Ohio State's number 4 in the country. So
I think the question is in the big picture, this little, we'll call it blip of the last month. Is it going to be a blip, or is it going to be some major scar tissue from a recruiting standpoint? And I want your 2 cents on that.
I think that other schools are going to use this as negative recruiting ammunition against Ohio State. Some people may assert that a wedge has been placed between Urban Meyer and Ohio State long term because of the way that this whole situation was handled. Was he hung out to dry in some regards by the administration, by the president, by the trustees? Did he get a fair shake? You know, we can debate that, and we have all debated that for weeks and months. It is what it is. They handed down a 3-game suspension, and I think at this point it behooves everyone involved that you just make the best of it and you go on. I think one of the things I think about, there's a kid from Huntington, West Virginia. His name's Darnell Wright. He is one of the top probably 5 offensive linemen in the country, and he was really seriously looking at Ohio State. But then you have this whole situation crop up, and it almost puts his entire situation with Ohio State. You have to hit the pause button because you just didn't know what direction it was going to end up. And now they're left coming back around after this whole episode's over, and they have to go in and say, okay, we want to get you on campus. We want to do a visit. We're going to send people down to watch you play and kind of start the process, restart the process. Is he going to take for that? That's going to be the question, I think, for him and a lot of kids outside Ohio. And that's another topic we can get into is Ohio and the way that's gone. But
right, we'll do that before we wrap it up. Steve Helwagen from bucknuts.com, 247.com with us here at Max and Irmis here in Westerville, with you up until 9 o'clock tonight, talking high school football and how the recent troubles at Ohio State have affected the Buckeyes recruiting.
I was going to ask. I mean, that brings up a question as far as I can foresee where the athletes per se may not look too deep into that. Like, hey, it's Ohio State, and they can look past that. However, the parents are involved in that decision, and you can only imagine parents really taking a close eye at, okay, this is what happened, or this is our perception of what happened, and really helping to, depending on how much leverage they have in the decision. But mom and dad, probably moms especially, are going to have their hand in this, and that, to me, that's where it could be a factor going down the road.
Yeah, we've seen a number of different reactions from recruits and also from their parents. One of the guys they have recruited, his name's Harry Miller, an offensive lineman, I think from the state of Georgia, and his mother recounted an episode from her life involving domestic violence, and they said that we know Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer has been in our house, and we support him fully, and we know what his stance is as a dad, as a husband, as a son, where he stands on this whole thing. So when you think about it, it was a case that, again, it'll be an individual decision for each of these people. And I guess, value judgments are going to be what they're going to be. But I think that in the end, I think that Ohio State's track record, Urban Meyer's track record is what it is. I mean, this Ohio State program right now, Greg, is about as positive as it could possibly be from an off-the-field standpoint. There haven't been a lot of issues with the players. The guys are graduating. I bring this stat up every time I can. 11 of the 22 guys who started against USC in the Cotton Bowl had their degrees. To me, that is, you just hang that on the wall and say, is anybody else doing this? Because I don't think anybody else is.
It's interesting when you talked about the recruiting aspect of all this, and we all know what a dirty business that can be and what a cutthroat business that can be. There's no question that coaches that are recruiting against Ohio State are using this in any way they can as an advantage against that. And as Greg, I think, touched on a good point, it's up to the parents, I think, a lot of times to maybe steer them in the right direction, knowing that they're going to be facing a lot of negative talk about what's going on here.
Yeah, there was a player from down south, Kane Patterson from Tennessee, who was committed to Ohio State. He really didn't get into a lot of detail on why he decommitted, but it was all during this episode. He was the one guy who didn't stay with Ohio State through this. And as it sounds now, the only guy.
The one guy, yeah.
And it seems like maybe now he's going to end up at Clemson. So there may have been some things there where Clemson was a school that he really, really deep down, was kind of a favorite, that type thing, and they hadn't come through with an offer or something. But whatever it was, this is just the way of the world, I think, is that, these kids come to Ohio State for a reason, and you hope it's obviously to get a degree and to play for the name on the front of the jersey and all these other things, and all these, things that we laugh and we say this is what, playing for good old State U is all about. But they all have this desire, obviously, to put themselves in position to play in the National Football League. I think that, and Ohio State has proven with I think they've had, the number escapes me. I want to say 25 to 30 guys drafted in just this last 6-7 years since Meyer's been there.
Wow.
And, a number, I think 12 first-round picks in his 5 or 6 years. So every year it's Ohio State just it takes over the draft, when you get to it. I mean, Denzel Ward went higher than anybody could have ever imagined. Billy Price went in the first round when he had a torn pectoral, and there were major questions about that. And people saw what kind of a quality human being he was, plus the work he had put on tape at Ohio State. He was a first-round pick, in my mind. Plus, he could play 3 positions.
And the Bengals desperately needed an offensive line.
Yeah, they needed help. So
desperately.
Hopefully it works out for him. But
so what? So now you've been there. Does it seem like there's a sense of normalcy back with the Ohio State environment right now?
Yeah, I feel like there is, Greg. I feel like the athletes, to me, they can internalize a lot of this strife, and you see them coming off the field and they're laughing and they're giggling, they're talking about the class of their girlfriend or whatever, their car or their apartment, whatever. They are college students, and they have much more going on in their life than just worrying about all this other stuff. So for them, it's been really easy for them to just put their blinders on and say, I got to be at practice today from 8 to noon. I have lunch, I have class, I have study table, I have lifting, I have all these things I got to do today, and that's what they put their head down. And I think that showed to me. They played lights out football the first 30 minutes against Oregon State. It was 42-14 at halftime. And then you had this long rain delay where you sat in the locker room forever, over an hour long, and you also substituted, like we mentioned, Nick Bosa didn't play in the second half. I mean, there's going to be some plays made when your best guys aren't out there.
Right.
So, to me, they attacked this whole situation, and I agree. I think this week against Rutgers, they're going to put their best foot forward. The starters may play longer this week against Rutgers because they have to be ready to play a 60-minute game
TCU.
the following week against TCU, because I don't think anybody in Ohio fully understands what TCU is all about. They give everybody a tough game. I think they played Oklahoma twice. One of them was a close game. They got blown out in the Big 12 championship. Otherwise, they play everybody tough. And they even knocked off, I think, a top 10 team last year somewhere along the way. So, if Ohio State feels they're going to go down to the Cowboys Stadium and just throw the helmets out on the field and win the game like they did at Iowa, they're going to get smoked, just like they did at Iowa. So I think that this is the week where you get the tune-up, the last tune-up before, because 2 of the next 3 weeks is the real thing. It's TCU, Tulane, Penn State on the road. I mean, there isn't a bigger game on the schedule.
Steve Helwagen, Bucknuts.com, 24/7 with us here at Max and Irma's. We're talking high school football and a little Ohio State football as well, too. The two kind of intermixed because of obviously the importance that Ohio State places on recruiting, and it's shown over the years the way the Buckeyes have just really started to dominate not only the state of Ohio recruiting, but across the nation as well, too. Urban Meyer taking a program places where maybe it hasn't been in a lot of years recruiting-wise. I want to go back to the point about coaches and what they're going to say against the program. I mean, everybody knows that that's coming. From an Ohio State standpoint, I don't know that anybody obviously has talked about this publicly, but how do you combat that? Just your opinion on that when you're going into a young man's house with his mom and dad sitting there and they want to know, that's the first thing they want to know about.
Well, Marty, the first thing I think about is stability. And by and large, I mean, guys have come to Ohio State like Tom Herman, Chris Ash, Luke Fickell obviously had been there forever, and now they're head coaches at other places. But by and large, he's done a pretty good job of maintaining stability on the staff. He likes those all-star coaches who come in like Schiano and Wilson as examples to give him 2 years so that it's not just a come in and hit and run type situation. And had Schiano had the opportunity to jump off to Tennessee like everybody thought he would have, you would have certainly, said that's fine. But you have like a Larry Johnson who's been there 4 or 5 years now, and you have Tony Alford who's been there for 3 or 4 years now. Taver Johnson is in his second time at Ohio State. He was there under Coach Tressel. He's back now as the cornerbacks coach. I just look at it, Ryan Day could be a guy, depending on how this season goes. People may be coming for him to be a head coach somewhere next year at a Power 5 school that needs somebody to kind of energize or take their program new direction. But to me, that is where the stability is these assistant coaches build these relationships with the high school coaches. They build them with the prospects. And then it comes down to Urban Meyer. I mean, he's got to go in and close and finish the deal on a lot of these guys. Over the course of this whole process, they have the kids in for summer camp. They have them at the Friday Night Lights camp. The coaches go out for in-home visits. They go watch them play football. So there are so many access points, I think, for these coaches and these players to be connected. The NCAA, I think, has done a pretty good job in allowing allowable contact to where relationships can be built. And I think that's where Ohio State excels, is once they get their hooks into these kids and show them, as we laid out earlier, everything that's positive about Ohio State. You want to go into business? We got the Fisher School of Business. You want to do this, you want to do that. We've got it right here, and they have a game plan for every kid to go in every direction. And I think that's what, to me, is what sets Ohio State apart right now, is that they have got this down to a science. Mark Pantoni has been on staff with Urban all the way back to Florida, and they had a way about how they recruited at Florida, and they've continued to do it, obviously, there at Ohio State.
Still to come on the program tonight, we're going to continue talking high school football. Bob Gecewich from Dublin, Jerome is with us. He'll join us in a few minutes to talk about his Celtics. We have a tough stop coming up on Friday night. Bubba Kidwell from New Albany will join us as well, too. The Eagles off to a 2-0 start as we continue our high school football discussion. Tim Street from the OHSAA will visit us as well, too, as we roll towards 9 o'clock tonight here at Max and Irmis in Westerville. Still time for you to come out and join us. The food's great. Check out the menu. It's a spectacular menu. Greg, have you tried anything yet, or are you waiting until after the show?
I've been dabbling in the appetizers for sure. They're near me, so you know that's going to happen.
So they're in a lot of trouble. So, but come on out. Max and Irma's right here at the corner of Maxtown and 3C in Wester. We're with you till 9 o'clock tonight talking high school football. You have anything else you want to add, sir?
I was going to add. You mentioned Ryan
Please go
Day.
ahead.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thanks for
sure.
referring to me.
Oh,
you mentioned Ryan Day. So Ryan obviously has done, in my opinion, a fabulous job the last couple of weeks. So I want to get your 2 cents on that, just as far as the overwhelming responsibility he's had in the last couple of weeks, and certainly this team offensively produced in a big way last Saturday.
Yeah, I think when you talk about being put into a position where you're now the acting head coach at Ohio State, that can be a tough job for anybody. And I think that he has handled it, even though he's never been a college head coach before, he has handled it very well. He's obviously relied on Greg Schiano and Kevin Wilson, who do have that experience. I think that they made a wise decision in allowing Day to take that position, and he has provided leadership and energy. And Coach Schiano said it took him a day or two to kind of get the hang of what he wanted to do and say in front of the group, but he said pretty quickly, I knew that he had it. And so I think that Day is a guy that we're watching kind of mature before our very eyes and could be on that Tom Herman trajectory to where he jumps off to a really good job this year, next year, wherever it is, or he's in position at Ohio State perhaps one day if something were to develop with Coach Meyer. Coach Meyer's got 5 years remaining on his contract through 2022. So, if he decides, at some point that he wants to, like he did at Florida, after 6 years, he had to walk away from it. So I guess we don't know what he's really kind of thinking or internalizing until we get a chance to talk to him. But Day has been, and you think about what he did last year with JT Barrett too. I thought JT probably had his overall best season, even though his freshman year was phenomenal. I thought he had just an outstanding year last year on the whole. The Oklahoma game was not a great game for them offensively. The Iowa game, he threw a pick 6, but otherwise, they didn't lose that game because of the offense. They lost that game because they couldn't stop Iowa, period. But I thought on the whole, he did a great job with him. And you see how Haskins has started out this season. Terry McLaurin caught that short pass and took it the distance. And they said it's because the timing was perfect, and when he came out of his break, the ball was there. He was able to make his move and picked up a couple blocks and was gone. And that's Haskins. That's Ryan Day, his quarterback's coach. And I just think, the sky's the limit right now. It seems like for what Day can do and what this offense could do this season.
Maybe as many weapons as Urban Meyer team has had since he's been at Ohio State. I thought the 14 team had some people that could do some things with the football, but this team, if Saturday was any indication, and again, that was a very bad Oregon State team they went up against, but nonetheless, there were some people out there to get some things done with the football.
You got weapons with experience. I mean,
right.
Pretty much the entire receiving crew is back. The tight ends, for the most part, are back. The 2 running backs, which are world class, are back. 3 or 4 guys up front that are back. So, and a quarterback, to me, that really is
coming into his own right before our very eyes.
I will never forget watching him 2 springs ago in the spring game, and he just jumped off the page to me. His release is just the ball comes off, and you can hear it, and it pops off his hands. And he showed me, I mean, I've already seen this, but he showed me certainly Saturday his ability to anticipate reads and throw the ball on time, which is why you get that big play. Yeah. When you throw the ball in like a little hitch route or a curl route, and McLaurin just turns it upfield. That's a ball thrown on time. But I also want to add just with Ryan Day, this year I was curious as to how the offense was going to look with a quarterback that's really not going to run the ball. Well, he didn't really run the ball.
Twice.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah.
No.
So you can see the stamp. As a coordinator, you want to go with what you have, and they're still running their offense, but they're tweaking a little to fit what they have, and I'd say 77 points is a pretty good start.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think you look at he only ran the ball twice. The offensive line was almost a makeshift operation because you didn't know if Thayer Mumford, the left tackle, was going to be able to play up until the last day. And Michael Jordan began working in the spring on his snapping, and he's now kind of on that path that Elfline and
Billy Price
had, going from guard to center. I mean, he could be an NFL guy a year from now too. So I think it's very exciting what they put together. And again, I don't think we're going to see him score 10 touchdowns in a game again. Maybe, I don't know, Tulane or whoever, but I certainly wouldn't expect it this week with Rutgers, although they have roughed up Rutgers pretty good.
Yes, they
the
have.
first 4 times they've played, and the average score is like 53-5 or something like that.
It's been brutal. That was going to be my last question to you, Steve. What are we looking at on Saturday with Rutgers coming to town? I mean, Chris Ash, who I think can be a very good head football coach at some point, he's obviously got his hands full with what he's dealing with in Piscataway.
They won 3 Big Ten games last year and got to 4 wins. They didn't go to a bowl game, and they gave him a 2-year extension. Believe it or not, he's only won 6 games the first 2 years, and they gave him an extension. That'll tell you how desperate they are for something good, and he's recruiting the guys in New Jersey to stay home at Rutgers. This quarterback, he's a freshman, Artur Sitkowski, I think is how you pronounce his name, Sitkowski, from right there in New Jersey, right near Rutgers. And he started the first game, threw for over 200 yards against Texas State. I think he had an interception in the game, but they won the game 35-7. And they're going to come into Ohio Stadium now. You've got Nick Bosa and Chase Young and Draymond Jones. They're going to make life miserable for this true freshman. I think we can pretty much predict that. I'm thinking something like 55-13, something in that realm.
Would
probably
be surprising,
is what we're looking at.
That wasn't
I know
same,
they're a 5-touchdown favorite.
That wasn't the same Texas State from the movie Necessary Roughness, was it?
That was North Texas State, was it not?
Well, it was Texas. That was Texas State. It was with Kathy Ireland as the place kicker.
Right,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Scott Bakula.
Yeah, that's right. Scott Bakula's the quarterback.
He's now catching criminals in New Orleans.
Well, he finally graduated college and moved on. All right, Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts.com, 24/7. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and what's going on with 24/7 and Bucknuts.
Yeah, we got complete coverage of Ohio State sports there, football, basketball, recruiting primarily. Bucknuts.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, all the recruiting coverage. We have Bill Kurlick, who's been doing this. He probably was calling you when you were in high school a few years ago. I won't. And of course, I've been around.
You could jump on like Marty did. You could throw me under the bus too.
No. Well, Greg
I just tossed you out in front of.
I was not up here. Yeah,
Greg and I were at Ohio State at exactly the same time. So that was.
At least I get some
exactly.
Wow, that's good.
So yeah, we're hanging in, but we'll have it all this season and. This college football season is already crazy. I mean, you think about some of the games we saw last weekend, and everybody talked about how great the Big Ten East was going to be, and Michigan loses, and Michigan State and Penn State struggled, and Maryland won though, so it's kind of like it was counterbalanced.
Got the fighting Tom Hermans again, second year in a row. They've done that. Dollar bills. All right, that'll do it for Steve Helwagen. We appreciate him stopping by. When we come back, we'll return to our high school football discussion from Dublin. Jerome, head coach Bob Gecewich will join us after this break. We're at Max and Irma's in Westerville at the quarter of 3C in Maxtown. Stop on by. We're here till 9 o'clock talking football with you.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Jermaine Honda of Dublin and Jermaine Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jermaine Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
talk high school football with you here each and every Wednesday up until 9 o'clock, 7 to 9. The OHSAA This Week in Football is right here on EBS, and I'm Marty Bannister. The quarterback, Greg Frey, alongside, as always, as we talk football with you. We've been talking a little college football mixed in with some high school football. We're going to get it back to high school football now. The head coach at Dublin, Jerome, Bob Gecewich, is with us here tonight. His Celtics are off to a 1-up and 1-down start. Now, when I sent you the email to have you come out, you said you must be really digging the bottom of the barrel now. I don't think we can call it that.
When you come to Jerome for a football coach and coming off of a loss, I don't know what Brad was doing tonight. He was probably doing another interview with someone else. So
you're off to a 1-1 start, and we talked last year about your program and where you were at, and I think you knew going into last year kind of what you were walking into. You'd lost some talent, and you made a good run at it last year. Are you better this year than last year?
That's hard to say. We had a lot of kids who started last year and got significant playing time for us. I think the stat is between weeks 3 and 11, we had 7.25 backups starting football games for us last year, which is something we hope to avoid, but we actually just hit strep throat, which is perfect timing for that. And then the natural just nicks and bruises and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we have a lot of kids coming back, but we also lost probably 2 of the better players since I've been there. And Kate Kaczerski, he blocked 9 kicks for us last year. That changes the dynamic of a lot of games. And Robert Cope, who was an absolute stud at running back for us.
I remember watching him. I saw your team twice last year. Cope really stood out last year. He did a lot for you.
Yeah, he did a lot for us. But we've had some kids step up and kind of fill in that role. It's not the same style, but I think that the way that we prepare and kind of the mindset that we try and set in our kids is when your card's pulled, we can't wait. Like, we have sophomores playing now, they can't be sophomores. And I think they expect that, and honestly, I think that they appreciate that they get that opportunity.
Well, it appeared last week, you guys, you took it on the chin playing Pick North. Very good team again this year, been a strong playoff team last couple of years. You look at you were trailing that game, but you guys came back late. Did that show some... like the game, if I recall, you're down 21 points. Is that right? And it came back in the fourth quarter?
It was 21-7.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we go into halftime 21-7. I think the interesting thing is our kids never feel like they're out of a game, though. You walked into that locker room, and I actually think our middle linebacker, Will Rigby, said, hey, raise your hand if you don't think we're going to win this game. And then there may have been some colorful language after that. And he said, because if you think that, you can get on the bus right now. It's good and bad. I don't like that we're that comfortable being down, but they definitely don't panic. And they came back out, and they played real well in that third quarter, and for the majority of the fourth, and Pick North just made a couple more plays than we did. So
you got to like that, though, when you've got a player to take charge of a locker room like that.
Absolutely. It frees me up from someone listening to what I have to say in there, so it's pretty good. But no, we have a large senior class this year. They've matured quite a bit. They've done a really good job. And while we can't pinpoint, hey, this one kid's our captain or this other kid's our captain, we have a lot of kids in there that have taken on those leadership roles, and that's great.
Talk about your numbers. I think as a coach, you want numbers to increase. It's your fourth year, so are your numbers where you want them? Are they on the upswing for you overall?
Yeah, they are. I think they're starting to stabilize a little bit. We walked into a program with roughly mid-70s on the roster, 9 through 12. Last year we had 113. Now that counts like 4 kickers, so I don't know if that really matters. But this year we're at 100-some-odd kids. And I think, when you talk to the kids from DeSales, we've really reached out to our lacrosse program. Those kids are good athletes. They just like playing. It changes some of the things that you do. However, those are kids that are still going to play really hard, and that's all you can ask for.
No question. We've got some folks saying hi to you already. Tom Cahill, Terry Larrabee saying hi to Coach Gecewich and saying go Celtics. You have a tough one coming up on Friday against Kaufman. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. The game against North, and again, when you walk into that again, you know what they bring to the table. You're going up against a lot of athletes. From a challenge standpoint, did you sense your kids kind of rose to that last week?
I thought so. Our kids really don't pay attention to that. They say ignorance is bliss. I bet you we could schedule Menor, St. Ed's, St. Ignatius, St. Xavier, and our kids would just think they were the team down the road, which is good and bad, right? I don't think that they really get shook about it. They don't concern themselves with that. They just go out and play, which is a good thing for us.
No question. Also hitting us, Ashley Smith, Gecewich, radio gold.
Yeah, I know her.
Radio
I know that
gold.
lady.
It's more TV than radio, but that's okay. it works both ways. Don't worry. You got faces made for radio on either end of him, so we're in good shape there.
So it's coming off this loss last week. What's your approach with the team this week? What are the things you have to focus on to improve on going into this obviously big game against Kaufman?
Well, I think there's quite a few things, obviously, and like you guys said, every coach, hey, we've got to focus on ourselves. We've got to get better. We do for different reasons. This is a big game in the community. It's a big game in our student athletes' households, and we just talk about how we have to focus on the locker room. We have to focus on ourselves. And look, your mom and dad love you, your girlfriend loves you, the people in the stands love you. All that stuff's great, but they don't really matter right now. When we're on that field, all that matters are the guys in that locker room, the dudes that you work hard with. So let's focus on us. Let's block out all of that noise because there's quite a bit of it this week. So we've got to do that. But coming off of the Pick North game, the frustrating part is on paper, probably not supposed to be a game.
Right.
But when you're in that position, you have those opportunities to make those plays. You go back, what is it that we did that hindered ourselves, and how can we fix that? And then at the end of the day, it either falls your way or it doesn't. I mean, life goes on, but you hate to look back and have those things that you did yourself.
I think it's interesting when we were talking to the DeSales players earlier, people who don't understand the CCL and how intense those rivalries are, these intra-district games. I mean, that's a different level, I think, isn't it, with these rivalries?
Yeah. So we played Scioto the first 3 years. And those have always been fun, really, really good rivalry games. The best thing that I can compare that to is when I coached in the MAC for 2 years up there at Marion Local. Those are respectful rivalries, right? Like everyone in Marion Local wants to beat everyone in St. Henry because that's where half their cousins live, and you just always want to beat Coldwater because that's Coldwater, and all those sorts of things. But it doesn't go over that line, and I think that's how it is with Scioto. Kaufman, we'll see. There's a lot of it's going to be a good one. There's a lot of tension between the schools. I'm not sending a Christmas card over there. Their administration and coach isn't sending anything to me, and I'm perfectly okay with that. So,
well, that kind of takes me then to a question we got on our Facebook page from Mike Tackett. What are the pros and cons for school districts having multiple high schools as opposed to the way they used to be, only having one high school per district, and most specifically the big school districts like Dublin, Olentangy, Hilliard, Westerville, and Pickerington?
So I think the pros to having those multiple those multiple high schools, obviously you give more opportunities for kids. You can develop more personal relationships. I heard the coach at Allen, Texas talk, and I think every coach in the room wanted to throw something at him. He goes, guys, I struggle to find the best 11 too. And then he goes on to talk about how he has 240 kids in his program. Yeah, I bet you do, because you're looking at a 5-star versus a 3-star.
Right,
that must be tough. So the downside to it, though, is if your district isn't careful and if your district isn't stringent on who goes where, it's really hard to build that community feel with your newer schools. And that's something that, it'll probably get me fired, but that's something that I think Dublin struggled with, is they haven't been as stringent on some of those things as I believe the Olentangys are. You transfer a school in Olentangy, it doesn't matter what the reason is, you sit out for a year. And that kind of creates that. But, we're a newer school. We hired a kid who played defensive line and offensive line for me my first year, and he's coaching our defensive line, and he's a Roman fighting for Rome, but there aren't that many of them in Jerome yet because it's a newer school still. Whereas when you have a one-school district, right, people grow up wanting to play there. Like I grew up in Euclid. I wanted to play at Euclid. I wasn't going to go to Villa Angeles St. Joe's. I wasn't going to transfer to Menor. Like none of that was ever a thought. You go to where you're supposed to go, and that's something that's a huge plus to having a one-school high school.
In that regard, then, are these games good?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't see why they would be bad, because if you don't lay it all out there on the line and you don't have that opportunity to compete, then it's all just conjuncture, right? It's, hey, we're the better school because we've got a big BSN sign that says that Nike sponsors us, and you guys don't have that. We're the better school because only one kid who's actually from our school scored a touchdown, and all the other ones are from move-ins. And you've got all those sorts of things going on there. Okay, that's great. Well, let's go out there and play. And we may lose by 140. I'm not very bright, but at least we had the opportunity to play. And we had the opportunity to fight and scrap. You know, I go back to my high school days. People talk about splitting publics and privates. Euclid always lost to St. Ignatius in the playoffs. I don't remember a single time being a kid growing up and playing and saying, well, you know, that's just not fair. No, we lined up and we had that opportunity to play, and that was good.
And that's what you want for your kids, like you talked about earlier. The opportunities to play, after all, are what this is supposed to be about.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And again, Jerome on Friday will play Dublin Kaufman. The head coach at Jerome of the Celtics, Bob Gecewich, is with us here at Max and Irma's here in Westerville.
So you got a Dublin Kaufman team that's 2-0. They're coming off a win over Gahanna, looking pretty solid so far. So what do you see on film that sticks out to you as you watch them on film?
As much as it pains me to say, they're a really, really well-coached football team. Their offensive line is huge. They average 280.4 across the front. So I don't know where they get them because we don't got those dudes at Jerome. I don't know. There must be a difference between old money and new money. But we don't have those guys. So we have a left tackle that's going to Purdue. Awesome kid, phenomenal kid. But they're really, really big, really well disciplined, have a really good scheme, and they have some. They've acquired some talent that takes them to the next level as well. So it's going to be fun.
Is it one of those, Bob, where and I know you want your program to be there, but when you start to win on a consistent basis, that just kind of if maybe I don't want to say falls into your lap, but winning breeds winning.
Yeah. I mean, winning breeds winning, absolutely. Got to be careful with this answer. Look,
I've already been warned on Facebook. Be good, Bob. So
yeah, that's my mom. That's why she knows better. I mean, it's her fault. So, no, look, I'm never gonna have a conversation with a middle schooler about come to my school for X, Y, and Z. I don't think it's fair to the freshmen, the sophomores, the juniors that I coach, and I say, hey, if you work really, really hard, we're going to give you every opportunity to play.
Right.
Now, if a kid moves in, great. That's fine. And yeah, we're in a situation, we're in a day and age where people do that. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's their right. They can move, right? You can move your kid to a different district because of academics. Right, me and my principal kind of got into it once, and he said, well, Bob, we do get transfers. We just get them for something else. And I said, yeah, well, chess team doesn't help me win football games, Dusty. So it's, but I love our kids. I love what we're doing. I love the fact that our kids work really, really hard. I love that they don't really pay attention to all of the hype of other schools. And honestly, that they don't take themselves too serious either. They're out there to compete. They're out there to have fun. And they're out there to see how they measure up. So
you talked earlier about some of your guys, some of your standouts. Maybe break it down a little bit for us. Let's go offensively, first of all. Who stands out for you there with football?
Hayden Shell has grown leaps and bounds as our quarterback. He's thrown for, I think, like 470, 480 yards this year. And last year we really struggled at times. Last year we played Bishop Watterson week 9, and we ran the ball 43 times. And I don't like running the ball that much. And it wasn't by choice. It's because that's what we had to do. And it did help having Robert Coate. We blocked for 60 yards, and he ran for 220, so that was good. So Hayden's really stepped up. Trey Ballingee's a really good wide receiver for us. Ryan Keys, same thing. Luke Martin. We've had a sophomore running back, Ezra Strickland, has come in. He's had a pretty good start to the season. Pick North was just a different beast. We couldn't run the ball on them, so we had to throw a lot. But against Watterson, Ezra had a really, really good game. And then we have a couple of offensive linemen that have really stepped up and played well for us offensively.
Defensively,
I think we brought a decent amount of kids back. We had to redo our whole linebacking crew. Mm-hmm. But with that said, like Dominic Nardone stepped in at outside backer. We have a 5'6" outside backer, Addie Blair, that splits time with a basketball kid, Joey Pick. And they play really well there. We've had a sophomore, Zach McMinn, step in. But we also have Tony Jima, who is a returning starter for us. He's played really well, and Cam Craig's our left tackle. He comes in, and he's got to play more for us too. But and then I think the heart and soul of our defense is right up the middle there with Will Rigby, John McDonald at inside backer. And then also Scotty Sonnenstein at free safety. He's a kid that we really love. He started for us at 143 pounds last year as a sophomore. He doesn't play like it. Eventually his body's going to break. Just hopefully it's when he's in college and not when we're coaching him. So,
no question. You opened the season by beating Watterson, then lose the tough one last week. Watterson goes to Orange and wins last week. What did that tell you about your football team?
I don't know if it tells us anything about our football team. It tells you, though, about high school football. You have no clue in high school football, right? Quarterback's girlfriend dumps him at lunch. Okay, there's a problem. Like our team right now, I'm nervous every time my phone rings because it might be another text from another kid who's got strep, and I don't know how their parents are going to react to that. Do they just take the medicine and then they go and they play? So I don't know how much that tells you about it. At the end of the day, we're sitting at 1-1, but we've got another opportunity on Friday to go out and play and have fun.
In that game against Kaufman on Friday night.
I love the transparency because as a coach, those are some of the things you deal with. Like the center can't get the ball back, because his girlfriend broke up with him. He's dribbling it back. It's like, come on, dude, get it back there, right? Or your guard, he's out of it mentally because same thing, right?
Yeah.
He wrecked his car. He got a ticket last night.
You have to be, in some aspects, you almost have to be a counselor in a lot of respects at times, don't you?
It's a little scary that someone would seek me out for counseling, but no, you do. And I think the majority of coaches, I think 99% of coaches are in this for the right reason. And that right reason is it's way more than winning football games, right? Very, very fortunate in 2 years at Marion Local to go to Ohio Stadium, win a state title, go up to Massillon, walk away with one, and that was great, and that's a great experience, and I'm not giving those experiences back, but I think the longer that we do this, the older that my kids get, the more important it is for us to look at this as another opportunity and help those guys out. Like we threw a leadership class in this year, and I think that's the best thing that we've ever done because we had 35 teenagers show up and actually talk about stuff. And they were talking about, hey, this is what I want to accomplish with my life, but I don't know how to do that. Right. And it's a little too touchy-feely for all this. I'm bringing the mood down at Max and Irma's, but no, I think that's what 99% of the coaches out there are in it for is to help kids. So yeah, when there's that counseling opportunity, that's an awesome responsibility that we better take really serious.
Well, and I want to add to that because having coached, I know what that's like on a daily basis. And we like to ask a lot of coaches here, do you enjoy practices more than game days? Do you look forward to practice?
It depends on the day. Today we came out and we were kicking off, and I sent our team off after about 5 minutes, and I say, you guys come out when you don't want to get your teeth kicked in on Friday. But no, I enjoy it. I enjoy all aspects of it. I know some guys hate going to the weight room, and clearly I don't lift enough, but I enjoy doing that because I enjoy being around our kids. Because the way that I look at it, a lot of people complain, hey, kids aren't as committed now as they used to be. Really? Because my dudes are playing in a lacrosse tournament from Friday through Sunday, and then they're still showing up on Monday morning. And my baseball kids may say, hey, I need to leave early on Thursday, but what are they going to do? They're going to play a tournament where they're going to play 8 games. I like being around kids that aren't afraid to be different. And it's so hard right now to put yourself out there. And that's something that we talk about, that social media aspect of everything, right? Everything's filtered. I don't put out pictures of me looking my worst. I put out the best version of me. These guys aren't that afraid of it because our quarterback's going to throw a pick. Our running back, God forbid, is going to fumble the ball. Someone's going to miss a tackle. Well, there are 500 people in the stands that could have done it better. Right, and they're not afraid to do that, and I just enjoy being around those guys, whether it's at practice or in games.
We hope you enjoyed this segment of the Bob Gecewich Show.
Tip your waiters and waitresses, everybody.
On the way out. No, seriously, I thank you for coming down. It's a pleasure to meet you. We talked on the phone a couple of times last show. I really appreciate you coming down and spending some time with us. When we come back, we'll talk a little New Albany football. Bubba Kidwell is in studio with us, or here in the restaurant with us, studio, restaurant, whichever it is. We will do all that when we come back. Thanks again, Coach. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Continue after this here at Max and Irma's in Westerville.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Jerome Honda of Dublin and Jerome Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jerome Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
It's Wednesday night, and that means we're talking high school football right up until 9 o'clock. From the Ohio High School Athletic Association, Tim Street will join us here in a short time, but we're going to continue our coaches conversation. We bring in now the head coach at New Albany, Bubba Kidwell. The Eagles are out of the gate at 2-0, having won 31-7 over Westerville South, and then last week knocking off Scioto 37-21. Coach, first of all, we appreciate you spending some time with us here tonight. 2 games in, you've got 2 victories. Positives about your football team?
Well, right now I'm ready to be done and be undefeated for the rest of my career. But no, we have a great group. We have a great senior class. I was very fortunate. Tried to talk Pat Sandwich out of resigning. Took about 3 weeks, and then when I realized that he was not going to be the head coach anymore, that's when I knew this was a group I wanted to start with. So. Really like our senior class. That's they won a lot of football games for us, and for the first couple years, their sophomore and junior year, and then this was their year. So they're excited about this. It's not a real serious group. That's probably why they've been successful. They love playing with each other, and I'm fortunate that I just get to ride along with them.
How important was it from a transition standpoint to keep it in-house, so to speak?
Well, for me, it couldn't have been a better situation. Having been there for 14 years previous, and I was a defensive coordinator. The entire staff stayed the same. Our strength coach, Jeff Side, stayed the same. We brought up a freshman coach to coach quarterbacks. So everything stayed the same. We're one high school town, unlike what Bob was talking about earlier. It was an ideal situation for me, knowing the community, knowing the kids, being there in the school system. So it was an ideal situation for me to come up. I was just fortunate that they asked me to be the head coach.
To me, the word continuity just comes to mind. I mean, because I've seen the progress of this program dating back to Mark Mueller, and then when Pat took over, and just I remember taking my son to practice 8 or 9 years ago, and you've been there for such a long time.
I have.
It's just such a there's stability, and I see that, and obviously that certainly bodes well going forward, as you mentioned. Keeping the remainder of your staff intact, and and that's momentum for a team rather than having all that change you got to deal with. So I think that's got to be a positive, and it helps your job too.
It does, and I do remember when you brought your son to practice, and that was several years ago, because that was when Mark was there, and I was probably about 6-7 years ago.
Yes, at least.
But yeah, when my first year there was with Mike Golden. So I was there with Mike Golden. We were very successful that first year, and then Mark took over, and Mark improved the program, and then Pat took over the program, and then he improved it. So my job is just not to mess it up. I have like I said, a great senior group. That's doing a good job of letting me still just coach defense, Brian Finn being the offensive coordinator, who's done an unbelievable job. Before he was the offensive coordinator with Pat, but as he called himself, the offensive play suggester, because Pat always called the offense. So this is the first year Brian has called the offense, and he has done an unbelievable job. It seems like he's been doing it for 20 years. So I'm very fortunate. Last week they gave me a call sheet for the first time. We had a first scrimmage and then the first game, and so I have no idea what play Brian Finn's calling. So they finally gave me a call sheet, but I left it in the office before we went out before the game. So I still have no idea what they're calling.
Still have no idea what they called last week.
Yeah.
You know, an interesting point a moment ago when you talked about with what Coach Gecewich was talking about with the multiple schools. There are a lot of us that remember New Albany when it was the stoplight and the Eagles Nest Pizza, and that was pretty much it.
Yep.
It's not that way anymore. I mean, that's a rapidly growing district, and I think down the road a piece, I think you are even realize that that's probably going to change at some point down the line. But where it's at right now, from where it was, it has to be pleasing to you know that you have the kind of enrollment numbers that you have and the bodies that you're able to get out for a football program.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. Our middle school program, all 6 of our middle school coaches teach in the school system. So, you don't have that every place. Majority of our coaches at the high school, teach at the high school. So, I mean, we're very fortunate to have that continuity, as you were talking about earlier, Greg. But, it's a great place to be, great administration, great kids, great families. The families are very successful. We don't have the biggest guys on our team. But, the parents, like I said, are very successful, so they expect their kids to be successful, and we're very fortunate to have them.
So now that it's yours, with your personality, what kind of stamp do you want to put in this program going forward?
Going forward, I want to keep a lot of things the same. All right, we constantly preach 1-0 each week. We've done so many great things as a program together. We helped build it, but we want to take it the next step. Our kids, we wear 11 on our jersey for 11 players together out on a field at once, week 11. But, our kids want to go a little further. It's early in the season. We're still not sure how good we are right now. I think we played 2 quality opponents, but we have, a couple tough weeks coming up here. So we'll find out a lot about our program.
And define taking it a little further for those. I mean, because I've seen you guys in the last 5 or 6 years take this thing pretty far.
Yeah, we have. We've been I think to regional final for the last 6 years, and we've been to the Final Four twice. So our kids aren't afraid to talk about where they want this program to go. They want to be, one of the elite New Albany football teams, which is hard to do because we've had some pretty good teams, but we have some great people. The staff that I get to work with every day. My father being one of them. He's coached over 40 years high school football. We have, I think, 5 former head coaches on our staff. Selfishly, I'd like to think it's something I have done to get off to a 2-0 start, but it's definitely our coaching staff, our players. I have not done anything different than what I have done, the last 6-7 years as a defensive coordinator. Now I just answer a few more emails, and but that's about it. Yeah, do this. Yeah. Pat never let me to come out to do this.
Bubba Kidwell, the head coach in New Albany, with us here. The Eagles off to a 2-0 start, and they have a tough stop coming up on Friday night against Licking Heights, and that's a team that Reynoldsburg kind of ran past them last week, but I don't think anybody's really too surprised. That's a loaded Reynoldsburg team. But nonetheless, I think that's an opponent there's some talent. That's a district in some ways it's kind of similar to yours, the way that it's growing and the enrollment numbers and everything. It's a tough test for you on Friday.
It is. It's. We've always had great games with Licking Heights. We used to scrimmage them. Now we've played them in the last few years. Last year they beat us 35-30. I know our kids have not forgot about that. That's this is a big rivalry for us. And they have some very, very good athletes. Their quarterback's a 3-year starter. He's hurt us during the sophomore and junior year. Our kids are excited to play this game. We're very close. A lot of our kids know their kids, and this will be like a playoff type atmosphere, kind of like it was last week against Scioto.
when you said a lot, because if you read between the lines, you talk about last year, because I know as a coach, it's like, okay, we remember last year. We're not letting that happen again. But I will also say that you get a team that just got their butts kicked last week. They're not going to be coming in here very friendly. You know they're going to improve, and you've got to make sure you convey that to your kids too.
Yeah. I remember several years ago when we lost a pretty tough game to Olentangy Orange, and we got embarrassed. And our season could have went one of two ways. And we explained this to our kids that, we probably had the toughest practices we've ever had in our program leading up to the next game after Orange, and I guarantee that's what Licking Heights had this week. So we are prepared for their best game. We know that they're going to be ready. Coach Waters is a great coach. They've done a great job. He's built that program, and they're in the playoffs and winning league championships. So we have a lot of respect for them, and it's something our kids, they'll be ready for this game because they know how important it is. We've had a tough week of practice as well. So
you won 7 of your last 9 last year, including the playoff victories, and now you've won your first 2 this year. Was there a carryover in momentum?
I think so, because we had a lot of juniors starting last year. So we were fortunate to have about 15 starters back. So that really helps. We had that success that we had going into the playoffs and losing to Massillon in the 3rd round. I think that did help us start the beginning of the year this year off on the right foot. Now, just because we started, winning the first 2 games, our kids know that doesn't guarantee anything, because the last couple of years we started 1-3, and then we ended up in the regional finals. So our kids, they face adversity in the past, and they know how quick things can switch.
I just want to ask a follow-up question to that. Was there a turning point last year? Because you start out slow, and then something changed. What changed?
Well, I think the big point. Turning point in our season was the Westerville North game. We were down, I do believe, by 10 with maybe 5-6 minutes left, and it was one of those games. Our kids knew we could not lose if we wanted to go in the playoffs. So we came back, we won that game, won in overtime. So that was a turning point in the season, and from then we got a little bit healthier after that, and our juniors that were just started to play like seniors, and that's been the fun part, watching these kids mature and grow up and become men.
It's interesting you talked about all the years you've been on staff, and now you're the head coach. You've talked about like the play sheet and all those things. What's the biggest difference for you though, from being a longtime assistant to being the head coach in one program?
Now, I guess a lot more people just wish you good luck before the game. It's
do the players treat you differently?
No, they don't treat me differently. I was very fortunate when I was with Pat Samonich. Yeah, he did not really care what we did defensively as long as we stopped him. So I kind of looked at it. I was the head coach of the defensive side of the ball. Not much has changed. I still, it's just defense for me. I talk to the team at the end of practice, talk to them before, but that's the biggest change. It's nice because, the kids, if I changed or if I did something different, the kids would notice that. And I don't think that's why they hired me. They knew we had a great staff. Right. And everybody, just do the job that they've done in the past, and we would be fine. And, it also helps to have Pat Samonich there at school. Sure, he's the dean of students. He's still there for a lot of our practices. And, he comes out. The kids see him in the hallway. They still call him coach. So he's still pretty close to the program. And he's somebody that I can go to when I have a question or when things aren't going right.
I can certainly relate. Having been a coordinator, you want to have that autonomy where your head coach trusts you to get the job done and lets you do your thing. And you've done that, and you're allowing that to happen too, which I think is a great thing, because that's showing a lot of trust in your coordinators.
Right.
You also mentioned you've got 5 former head coaches on the staff. That's a load of experience. What is the relationship like with them that you can lean on them maybe sometimes? Hey, or do you?
The best part about it is that everybody on our staff, nobody has an ego. So, like I said, a lot of coaches have done it in the past, been head coaches, and they're helping me through this. just like today we had a parent meeting and sat in there and talked to the parent and one of the players, and but I'm able to fall back on some of those experiences that they've had. My father, he was a head coach for 13 years at Johnstown and then 3 at Centerburg. So the one advice he gave me was, when he gives me a suggestion, just not to say no right away and to think about it for 24 hours. So, but I think that was more for him instead of just telling him no. So, but no, I'm very fortunate. We have an unbelievable staff, and the experience. Nobody tries to talk over one another. When one coach is coaching, everybody kind of backs off, and then they kind of, we've been coaching long enough with one another that everybody kind of feeds off one another.
You said your father was a head coach. I would assume he coached you.
He did. Going into my freshman year, we moved to Gahanna, and then he was an assistant at Gahanna.
And is it your son's on the team now? Right?
He is.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them are.
What is it like to coach at this level? To coach your sons?
Well, one of the things last year, my son got in a little bit last year, and he came over on a sideline, and it was the second series of the Gahanna game, and I told him, I'm like, get off the bench. I'm talking to the defense, and he said, I was out there on the field. And so I really have no idea. Had no idea that he was out there, and so I got on the headphones with Scott Elwer, and I said, was Brody really out there on the field? So I really have no clue what's going on because I don't coach his position. So I'm watching the position I coach and trying to call the defense.
You really don't realize that. Yeah.
So I go back and I watch a film either that night or the next morning. That's when I get to watch them. So that's probably been the most difficult part of coaching and having my son on the team, not getting to to actually watch them, but also get to be around them, a lot more than what a lot of fathers do with their son. Right. So, there's, pros and cons to that.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I think right away people will just assume, well, exactly what he's doing on the field because you're coaching the football team. But your focus is here and he's playing there, so it does make it difficult.
Yeah, we have a, pretty good understanding. His coaches coach him, and I coach my guys on the side of the ball, and we really don't talk till after the game. Right. So
I find that I think it's very interesting to hear that, because
if I probably wanted to say a lot of things I really wanted to him, I think my wife would be upset with me. So.
I can almost guarantee you she knew he was on the field, right?
Yeah, she did. Yes.
Yeah, no question about that. As we wrap it up, Coach, we've talked about the game of Licking Heights. Maybe break it down for us. You've mentioned some of your players already, but some of your leaders right now, both sides of the football.
Well, Jack Wilson, Mason Mathias, not too many programs do what a coach talk about the two guards first. But Jack Wilson, Mason Mathias, they're the heartbeat of our offense. There are two guards in the wing T, as that's they're your leaders, and they both started last year, and I think that's why big reason why Brian Finn has been very successful offensively in the first two games is because of those two. And then you put in Micaiah Burton, who was an All-State running back last year. Have Luke Muter, Alex Cox. We have, so many weapons on offense at running back. Nobody's going to wow you with their appearance, when you look at them in a uniform, but they're tough kids. They're good kids, and I'm very fortunate. That's on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, we have, our whole defensive line back. We have, Mo Menard, Will King, who has committed to Akron, Jack Irvine, and then linebackers are also Billy Lee on the defensive line. Then we have Brody White, who played a great game the first week against Westville South. And, we have some very experienced corners in Dean Danfus and Gabe Owusu. So those are and Michael Bowman at safety, and, my son Brody at safety as well. So it's a great group. All those guys I mentioned, they all started last year. So it helps when you have a veteran defense coming back. I say that, but then Brian Finn, kept the ball away from Dublin Soda for how long, Aaron? 31 minutes. So, that also makes the defense a little better right there, too, when they're not on the field.
Well, and I like that you mentioned guard play because for all the years I've either coached against New Albany or watched New Albany from a broadcast standpoint, the guard play has always been exceptional. When you guys are firing, when your guards are, I mean, it's fun to watch in that offense because they are really good, and they're not always very big, but they're athletic and they're very well coached. And when you get those guys running and doing their thing, that is an offense that is very difficult to stop. Very difficult.
It is, and Brian Finn, he installed the jet into the wing tee this year. So, it's another version that kind of allows us to attack the split side and allows our guards to get out there and on the jet. So, I love watching when we run the buck sweep and we get our guards, pulling and watching those guys get out there because that's the closest they get to where their parents can see their actual number from the stands. So.
All right, on a Friday night, New Albany takes on Licking Heights. The head coach of the Eagles, Bubba Kidwell, with us. We appreciate you coming down. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Best of luck on Friday.
Thanks, Greg.
When we return, we'll bring in Tim Street from the Ohio High School Athletic Association to help us wrap up the program tonight. Again, this is the OHSAA This Week in High School Football. We're at Max and Irma's in Westerville. Still about 15 minutes to stop out and join us. We'd love to have you do so. We continue after this timeout.
Okay.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Jerome Honda of Dublin and Jerome Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Jerome Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
It has been a great night here at Max and Irma's in Westerville. This is where you'll find us each and every Wednesday night talking high school football with you. I wasn't given a rundown of some of the great things to have here at Max and Irma, so I'll quickly run down some of the ones I was given last week. So it hasn't changed that much, but it's all delicious. Don't forget that on Sundays you get the $1. You're okay? Okay. $1 off of all desserts. Monday is Meatloaf Monday, where you can enjoy a couple of slices of Irma's meatloaf for only $10. Tuesday, always Kids Eat Free Day with the purchase of an adult entree. Wednesdays has now become Why Not Wednesdays, and why not be here to talk high school football with us, where we feature Max's original margarita for only $3. Lastly, every Thursday is Thank You Thursday, where they like to say thank you for being such wonderful guests. $5 cheeseburgers and endless fries. For more information updates, make sure to like us on Facebook. Every store, of course, has their own personal page. To be sure to support your local Max and Irma's, and we certainly thank them for having us out here each and every Wednesday night. They do a great job. We really appreciate them having us out here to talk high school football. The Director of Communications at the Ohio High School Athletic Association, our good friend Tim Street, has ventured out here on this Wednesday night to join us. Couple of weeks into the high school football season, has it gone swimmingly?
I haven't heard that word in a long time, Marty, but yes, it has gone swimmingly. And actually, part of it is we have now down in Southwest Ohio last weekend, we had some delays.
Right.
They had a storm go through. But actually, the majority of the state's been in pretty good shape weather-wise. And the heat that we've had yesterday and today, we haven't had that on the Friday nights. And that's one of our worries is when we have that on a Friday night. And actually the front's coming through tonight or tomorrow. And actually this weekend's supposed to be really good from a weather standpoint. So I think we're in good shape.
Well, the irony is we talked about that last week. We talked about the weather delays, and certainly, being from Cincinnati, I was, St. Xavier Coleraine went to halftime last week. They got delayed, had to come back at 9 a.m. in the morning. We just talked about the headaches that creates for coaches and athletic directors and the OHSAA just trying to coordinate all that. So it was evident, but I'm surprised that there wasn't more than just Cincinnati.
I don't know what happened with the front, but it kind of stuck over Dayton and Cincinnati
it just
there.
Camped out.
But speaking of St. X and Coleraine, the good thing with that kind of matchup is that it was two Cincinnati teams. And early in the season, a lot of times we'll get the non-conference games where the teams are far away. And if you get a postponement like that because of weather and the teams are 3 hours away, boy, that makes it tough. And teams that they will wait as long as they can to try to finish that game.
Sure.
And but it's actually one of the risks that you have when you schedule a non-conference game that's really far away.
Right.
So I'm happy to see that St. X is playing Coleraine. Those two teams are going to play each other. If they need to come back the next morning and finish it, they can do that.
See, if it was up to me, they should have stayed and played at 2 in the morning because St. X had momentum, and they came back at 9 in the morning, and Coleraine took momentum. So I beg to differ.
Not a surprise there at all. Well, you hit on a good point, Tim, when you talked about that. I think sometimes fans don't really understand why a game, for example, cannot be continued to Saturday, especially if you're talking about the distance involved. I mean, high school football teams don't have the budget to go out and get 70 hotel rooms or whatever it is to house a team when you have to make that kind of a trip. So really the only alternative is to just thanks for coming and let's worry about it next year.
Yeah, and if they can't get the first half completed, it's like the game was never played.
Right.
It's an open date basically. It's not a forfeiture. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people think one of the two teams has to forfeit, and that's not the case. But it's something in the early season when we're on Labor Day weekend and the weekend before that. It's still summer. You still get those thunderstorms, and you're not into conference typically at that point, so you're looking for games. And a lot of schools, they're going to have to go outside their geography to get a game. And so you run the risk, but you're right that if you have a weather situation, high schools aren't going to be able to just go, get 70 hotel rooms. So they're going to try to do whatever they can to play that game, knowing that they're going to get back on the bus and go home. And then if they're going to come back the next day, obviously that is quite a strain on the players. The one thing, though, we always stress, though, is that if they want to wait a couple days and finish that game on a Sunday evening or a Monday, they can do that if they want to. There's no rule that says you can only play one game in a week or in a 7-day span. Wow. So there's some games that actually finish on Monday if you have to. That's obviously not ideal, but that could happen.
That's interesting. I'll let Greg jump in a second, but I don't think fans are fully aware of that part of it, that if you have to come back on Monday and finish it, you can do it.
You can do that. There's no OHSAA regulation that prevents that from happening, is the best way to say it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I noticed, again, I watched some of the highlights of St. Xavier and Coleraine. You watch the first half, and Colerane's in white jerseys. They're on the road. And in the second half, the next morning, they're in red. So their jerseys were soaked, obviously, because they got stuck in the rain. So you got a jersey issue, too, where they didn't have enough time to get their jerseys. So they wore a different color next day. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
It could happen. And how would you like to be broadcasting that game if the kids wearing a different jersey number the next day?
Yeah. We've been through that.
You've been through that, haven't you?
There were some stories about that.
I bet.
We've dealt with that. But I'm glad you brought that up, though, about the moving the game to another day of the week. Again, that's it doesn't happen rarely, and you may not even know when the last time that happened. But it is, again, there's no guideline against it. So.
Yeah, there's nothing that prevents that, and it does happen from time to time. Typically it's in the early season, but and typically too, coaches will want to stay and get the game done that night, and that's ideal. But obviously, I'm gonna put my OHSAA hat on here and say that we err on the side of caution, because if you can hear thunder, if you can see lightning, that goes into a 30-minute delay, and that 30-minute delay keeps restarting every time that happens. And I know that a lot of people will roll their eyes or they want to say that's a pain in the butt, but we're going to err on the side of caution. And we're the ones liable for a lot of that contest, and so we don't want people out there if there's a threat, and not just the players but the fans. They're sitting in metal bleachers a lot of the time. Heaven forbid that would ever happen where we'd have a catastrophic incident. So we err on the side of caution. It's a 30-minute rule, and it's never too many times you can remind folks of that rule.
Tim Street, the Director of Communications at the Ohio High School Athletic Association, with us here at Max and Irma's here on this Wednesday as we talk high school football. We had Jerry Snodgrass in with us last week at the beginning of our program, the Executive Director of the OHSAA, and he reinforced the point that 30-minute rule, that's not your rule, so to speak. That's the National Federation of High School rule. It's not an Ohio rule. It's nationwide.
National rule. And that's a good segue, too, that the football rules that we play by are national rules. We don't make up our own playing rules in Ohio. We make up the regulations as to when you can start practice, what divisions play on what night in the postseason. We make up the sport regulations, but the actual playing rules are national rules. One came up on our social media this past weekend. In high school football, you're not allowed to hurdle a player. You can at college and pro.
That's right.
You cannot hurdle a player with both feet off the ground at the high school level, and people will see that, and you want to make a highlight out of it. You see it at the NFL level. You see Zeke Elliott do that every Sunday, it seems like. At the high school level, that's a flag. So, people want to ask us about that, and we're, it's the same thing as shot clock in basketball. It's a national rule that there is no shot clock. It's not an Ohio rule. That's a national rule. So, good segue. I'm glad you brought that up.
And I'm sure you haven't heard anything about the shot clock either.
We don't hear about that very much.
Maybe only every other day.
Oh, ask Jerry about that sometime too. He'll appreciate that.
I will. With the way the things that are governed in the state, and again, I think it's interesting to bring these points up because of the fact I think a lot of folks just assume that the OHSAA can drop the hammer and decide things with games and contracts. Not the case. You don't really have any say at all in how that works. So when teams decide where they want to play, when they want to play, you can only tell them when you can play.
Yeah, we decide when the season starts,
right?
But the schools control their regular season schedules. And I'm glad you brought that up, too, because a lot of people think we control conferences, that we control your regular season schedule as to who you schedule, and we don't. We control the postseason. We're set up to run the playoffs, and football specifically. For regular season games, it's entirely up to the school to determine who they play in the regular season. It's up to the school to determine what league they're in, whether they play a JV game on Saturday or not. And on that same topic, the schools and the leagues and the assigners in that area handle the officiating for those games, too. We assign the crews for the playoffs, and you had Bo Rugg on, I think, in week one.
Week one.
And Bo is in charge of that for the playoffs, but the schools are in charge of that for the regular season. So there's definitely a fine line between how long the postseason goes and that the schools control their postseason, and then once the playoffs start is when the OHSAA is in charge.
What about start times? Because there's been the last couple of years, there's 7:30. Who controls that? Do the coaches, do the schools have control of that, or is that just stipulated this is when you guys have to start?
It's not an OHSAA regulation. That's another example of something that's up to the schools for the regular season. There's a lot of leagues that determine that for their league schools, and I'll say that the majority of schools around the league do start around the state do start at 7. But there are some leagues and some schools that still do start at 7:30. I don't know exactly why they would start at 7:30. It could be in a major metro area, they want to give fans an extra time and traffic to get there to a game. But yeah, that's determined by the league or the home school.
Some are even going at 7:15. I know some areas using that as kind of a halfway point, I guess.
The funny one I've heard too, though, is that in the computer system where schools put their games in, I think if they don't set a time, the default time is midnight. And so we'll get calls or emails sometimes saying that, hey, they see that it could be the St. X Moeller game. It says that's at midnight. That's kind of a late.
That real?
That's kind of a late start for that game.
Late to keep the kids out on a Friday night. Was it Jim Trails who used to say nothing good happens after midnight?
Nothing.
Well,
I thought it might have been after dark. Wasn't it after dark?
Probably
that Tress
it's probably both with Tress. I don't think there's any question about that. Tim Street from the OHSAA with us here at Max and Irma's as we talk high school football here on this Wednesday night. It's week number 3 coming up, and you're nearing the first week of the release of the computer rankings. And I think a lot of folks, again, I know you get a lot of questions about those, and maybe take us through the steps. It's at the week 4 is when they first come out, or is it week 5?
Week 4.
Week 4.
So this coming week, so a week from this past Monday, so this coming Monday is when the first Associated Press poll comes out.
Right.
And we can talk about that too. There's about 20 voters statewide that do vote in that. if any of them are listening, I wish there were more voters than just the 20 or so, and hopefully we do get more than that. But the first AP poll comes out on Monday night, this coming Monday. The week after that, after week 4, is when our first computer rankings come out. And, a lot of folks are checking every week to joeidle.com, right. and we do partner with Joe for the tech side of our computer ratings, but our office still is in charge of that. Because, and we had one actually in week 1 where if there's a forfeiture, we're going to know that and then pass it on to Joe, but we're going to have that in our system first. And then we're going to pass it on to Joe. So we work with Joe. His site is great. He is tracking every score of every game.
It is amazing what he does.
It is amazing, yeah.
I know on the scoreboard show I do a 98.9 on Friday nights. That's where I go for a lot of my scores because they're there and you know that it's accurate. You don't have to guess or hope that it's on social media correctly. But that's where he does such a tremendous job. The one-loss records are updated immediately. I don't know how the guy does it. Maybe he's
he works with our office. I will say this because and too with the computer ratings is he's working with our staff on to make sure what division everyone in, but not only the Ohio schools but the out-of-state schools, because that's one thing our office staff does is we have to track down the enrollment numbers for the out-of-state schools and basically assign them to a division based on our enrollment numbers. And so we have to assign the out-of-state schools. And, not only do a lot of our schools play Canadian schools, but we have some of our schools that are actually in leagues that are in West Virginia, down in Southeast Ohio. We have a couple schools that are in leagues in Pennsylvania. Actually last week I was up in Ashtabula with one of our network affiliates up there, and a school near there, Conneaut, is in a league in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So we have to get the enrollment numbers for all those schools, plug them into an Ohio division, and that determines how many computer points they get. So we're running that through the computers every week. I don't make your head spin.
No,
Marty,
it's
making mine spin.
I was just thinking, I don't know Joe Idle, I know of him, but if he has a family, well, they're pretty much gone from him from about August till the end of December, end of November.
Not if you have a good algorithm.
If the computer's working that day, right?
Yeah, that's true. He does a fabulous job, no doubt. And I didn't know how much detail went into the out-of-state and out-of-country schools. I mean, that makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Because now people can't, because you hear the complaints, they played so-and-so, But no.
We get their enrollment. We get their mail enrollment, and that's actually what our office staff does quite a bit of the month of July and August. We reach out. We get the schedules. We check what the out-of-state schools are, and we're on the phone. We're on the email checking with those school administrators and getting the mail enrollment for those schools.
I didn't get a chance last week when Jerry Snodgrass was here with us, and I should have. But can you update us on where things stand? I know you've had some issues with the competitive balance plan, and I know coming out of Southwest Ohio right now, there have been some issues with that as far as what works, what doesn't work. Where do things stand with that right now?
Sure. Well, we're looking at a September 17th deadline that both sides have to submit the various documents and paperwork we need with the Ohio Supreme Court. And if those are watching and aren't sure what we're talking about, just go to our website, OHSAA.org. We have several press releases there that explain why we're in this position. But basically the Greater Catholic League co-ed division in Cincinnati, which is the medium and the smaller size schools, filed a lawsuit against the OHSAA about one aspect of competitive balance. It deals with the feeder schools, and they basically found a judge that issued a TRO against us. We appealed to this Ohio Supreme Court. They agreed with our complaint and took jurisdiction of the case. So we're basically all waiting to the September 17th deadline when both sides have their documents in. Sometime after that, it could be September 18th. It could be January 18th. We don't know. Is when we'll find out when that case is going to be tried. And there's still a lot of different scenarios that could happen with that. The good thing for right now is that the competitive balance formula and process is in place as our schools voted it in. And as the divisions were assigned back in January, we don't have to say everything's on hold. Basically, we can say we're back to where we were, what everyone thought they were going to be going in. We obviously, everyone certainly hopes that that's the way the 2018 season unfolds. But there's still a lot of unknowns out there. We're going to be really curious how it unfolds in the Supreme Court.
And regardless of what you're dealing with now, I think the response to the competitive balance program, competitive balance plan, I should say, has been mainly positive, hasn't it?
It has been mainly positive, absolutely.
And I understand why some of these schools are perhaps doing what the GCL schools are doing. I mean, they're trying to look out for themselves, look out for their league, and try to make sure everything's fair. But this, as far as fairness goes, Tim, I don't know that you could have done any better than this.
Yeah, and actually, our general counsel and Jerry probably would have mentioned this last week. We call it competitive balance. That's what our schools voted into place, but really it's enrollment balance is probably a better way to say it, because the team still decided on the field. You have the same game. What the process does, it just tweaks how schools are assigned to their division.
Right.
For example, Hoban was a Division III school for a long time. Competitive balance puts them at Division II. So it basically changes how schools are put into their division. It affects non-public schools more than public schools. We don't shy away from that. It does. But both public and private schools go through the same process of competitive balance. It's been interesting with this case, though, speaking of St. X and the Greater Catholic League, because the biggest schools in the state, they're not really too interested in this, because they're always going to be
fine.
Division
Right.
They're like, hey, we play our games on the field. We don't really have a dog in that fight. So they know that it doesn't really affect them a whole lot. It's the medium and smaller size, mainly parochial schools that are the ones that are raising the flag here. So we're in Supreme Court, though. We'll see what happens.
I like the word choice of enrollment versus
Enrollment,
competitive. I think,
yeah.
to me, just as a fan, that sounds so different, because I think the perception sometimes, competitive, well, such and such school, they're always there. They got the numbers, and it's not always true. A lot of times it's great coaching or tradition or whatever that may be, but the numbers are what they are, and I think that from an enrollment standpoint, that helps clarify for me very much so. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, we branded it as competitive balance, and that goes back 7 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but it goes back a long time. Dr. Ross branded it as that, and that phrase had been used in a couple other states. But I think moving forward, we really are better calling it enrollment balance, because it doesn't. And that's actually what the GCL Co-ed is saying, is that some of their schools have not been competitive. Why are they subject to this?
They're subject to it, right.
And so we're saying, well, it doesn't have to do with competitive equity. In fact, we had a success clause in one of the formulas that we put to our membership, and they voted it down. So the competitive factor isn't really involved in it. It's enrollment management is really what it is.
Interesting. You mentioned a moment ago, Tim, and we'll wrap it up with this. You mentioned how you were up in Ashtabula watching a game last week. Maybe take us through that for folks who don't know. When Friday rolls around, you guys aren't just sitting in your chairs. You're getting out watching games and seeing how things are going around. And by you guys, I mean the office, the Ohio High School League Association.
We are. And actually, you can't get much further away from Columbus than Ashtabula. So, yeah, that's more than a 9-iron and a driver away from Columbus.
Yeah,
but
even for Frey.
Yeah. Well, it might be 2 drivers for Greg, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I drove through there a couple weeks ago. All I can tell you is it's a long haul. It's not 2 hours.
No, it's a little bit more than that. You go up to Cleveland and turn right, and you keep going for a while.
Keep going.
But it's beautiful country up there,
yes,
though, but yeah, we are out watching games, and part of it too is we just like going to games. As Bo probably said, Bo goes to 3 games every Friday night.
That was amazing. He was telling us that,
he it's kind of funny. He will often alert the schools where he's going to the week before, and they got the orange cone on the parking spot where he's going to be. So he'll go in there, and the thing he loves too, and Bo is a 35-year college football official.
Wow.
Has done it a long time. He runs the clock for Ohio State football and basketball games.
Right.
You might not know his name if you're watching, but you'd probably recognize him if you saw him. He will often get to the game where he wants to be in the locker room with the officials at halftime. Those are his people. He is one of them, and we are so lucky to have Bo, because not only is he a good football administrator, he's an official.
Right.
And that is so important to what we do, and we can't stress that enough, that we have 15,000 officials in Ohio. Not all football, but total. And we need every one of them, and we need more of them. And Bo is that voice that he has with our officials.
That's another great topic that next time we have you on, we're going to delve into that as well too, getting the officials, because I know those numbers aren't what you want them to be. They got to be better. There's no question about it. We always appreciate you stopping by, Tim. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Some great insight as to some things that the Ohio High School League Association does dealing with high school football on a Friday night. So we get you ready for week number 3. There are a lot of big games coming up on Friday night. Aaron, where are you at on Friday? Aaron's at New Albany for the Licking Heights game. I'll be at Upper Arlington for Cincinnati Winton Woods in Upper Arlington. Looking forward to that. The last season at the Marv, by the way. After this season, they plow that over on the and start building a new up there. Put a whole new there'll be a visitors locker room and all kinds of great additions to the stadium at Upper Arlington. So, and we'll have a complete coverage for you. We invite you to join us on 98.9 The Answer on Friday night after the games are complete. For all the latest scores, we'll hear from coaches, players, you name it. Broadcasters will have it all for you on Friday. Thanks to the folks here at Max and Irma's, Adam Phillips, and the group. They do a great job. We thank them so much for having us out. Thank you for being with us. We're back with you next Wednesday night for more high school talk. For the quarterback, Greg Frey, Marty Bannister, our entire EBSN staff, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next Wednesday.